I want to start off by asking you about a necklace that I've seen you wearing.
Oh, Jesus, should I put it on? Let me put it on.
Yeah, tell us what the necklace says.
This necklace says chingona. Maybe you can see it. It's
Yes.
close up. That's where you can see it. So it says chingona. And I honestly don't know lo que diría mi papá, like my father would say if he saw me wearing this. May he rest in peace, because it's a big word. But I love wearing it in such a delicate necklace.
Tell me what being a chingona means to you and the responsibility that that title carries.
The first person who I remember just kind of using that, like, and I am, was when I interviewed Sandra Cisneros, actually, for the Latino list. And she had this kind of revelation, like, I am a chingona, because in Mexico, to kind of say that to yourself is about yourself, that you are a badass and that you're going to take on this term that has been, kind of used in silence in the back, and just kind of own it. I think it is very badassery just to own that term. And wearing it on a necklace, to me, I like it when people say it's not that you're fearless because you have fear, but you just push through it. I mean, I certainly don't have fear about wearing a necklace like this, but I think it does manifest like I'm prepared to push the boundaries, and I'm okay with that.
Nice. I want to talk about your book a little bit. When and why did you decide to write Once I Was You?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't really want to write another book. Writing a book is very, very hard. And the original idea that I had was that I would write a short book, a little pocket book, like the kind that you would pick up at the airport, when we used to be in airports. And that it was going to be, the title was going to be Illegal is Not a Noun. Mm. I had a viral moment when I said that on MSNBC 4 years ago. People were just like, we don't really see that book in terms of your work, Maria. We really want a bigger book from you. That's how Once I Was You was born. Surprisingly wrote about being a survivor, because it turns out that that's an important part of my story. I really wasn't sure that was going to come up, but I love what Gloria Steinem said, which is it's multiple books in one. That's kind of the way I feel about it.
How have the stories that you've told as a journalist about immigration and family separation helped you reflect on your own narrative and experiences as a Latina?
Well, it was actually in the process of writing this book that I kind of came to terms with something that was happening, that had happened in my own life. And it was, a number of things happened for this to kind of unfold, but it did, it did kind of spark when my mother heard the sounds that we all heard, mm-hmm. which were the sounds of the little kids crying because they had been taken from their parents and they were being held in those cages. And it was then that my mother in her 80s called me crying and said, oh my God, I could have been one of those mothers. And I was a little bit like, ¿Cómo? And it turned out that it could have been me. They tried to take me when we arrived with privilege, with green cards, in an airport in Dallas in the year 1962.
Yeah, you had a rash, right, on your skin.
Yeah, I had a rash, and they thought it was the German measles. But the point is that until 1964, Mexican immigrant bodies were being checked. Were we clean enough? Were we clean enough to come into the United States? Were we going to be accepted in this country or not? I ended up being a part of that. I had no idea until this happened in the last 3 years that we kind of heard this. When that happened, it was like, now I understand why, as a journalist, this has been an issue that I've never been able to let go of. Mm-hmm. Not that I've wanted to. The story of reporting on immigration is hugely important to this country and to understanding who we are. But I definitely felt like, wow, this is what trauma looks like.
And there's obviously a lot at stake in the imminent election on Tuesday. Assuming that Biden is elected, do you think that will change the conditions at the border?
So I'm not going to assume anything. I just, I think it's too early, a potential landslide of sorts, but I'm not sure that that's what's actually being seen. So I'm prepared to have public patience for a bit to let this play out, as it were. You know, if Donald Trump is reelected, we're talking torture here.
Hmm.
That is what we're talking. That is going on now. Some of this was happening under the Obama administration, under the George W. Bush administration. So it's not just a Trump problem. But what needs to happen is it needs to stop. I mean, there needs to be a radical response to what's happening, and not because you're a radical leftist, but because what's happening is radical.
Yeah.
The taking of children is radical. Should have never happened in our country. The taking of women's uterus is radical. So the response should be equally radical, which means it needs to stop. I mean, at this point, in my view, we don't have an immigration issue that needs to be solved. We have an international human rights problem that needs to be solved.
You've been a journalist for nearly 30 years, working in public radio stations, network, public, and cable TV news channels. And you've talked about being the first Latina journalist to be hired at NPR. Do you feel like there are more mentors now in the public radio world and in media in general? And is there less tokenism in journalism, you think?
Yes, there are more
Yeah.
of us, but the tokenism still exists. You know, we are Latinos and Latinas are the second largest voting bloc in the entire United States. Do you feel that when you look at the mainstream media? Does the mainstream media reflect back to us that we are that powerful? No. I mean, I don't understand why it doesn't do that. It doesn't do that because they don't really, the mainstream media is not reflective of who we are in terms of the level of diversity. I mean, we're all in this battle right now, right? To demand more representation. So this is going to be an uphill battle right now because Latinos and Latinas, you know, in Once I Was You, it's like I write about feeling invisible. We Latinos and Latinas now are also invisible, but we're also attacked. So now our struggle is not just to be seen in the mainstream media. Now, on top of that, we have to deconstruct the narrative that has been constructed about us.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of work now that we're having to do. And we have to have willing partners in that conversation, which has to be the whole country. And so we have a lot of work to do. This is what's happened over the past, not just 4 years, but really since 9/11 regarding immigrants and immigrants has set us back decades. So we have a lot of work to do.
Hmm. And what advice do you have for Latinos and people of color working in journalism and elsewhere, other fields?
Don't give up. That's that's really the essence. And I know it's really hard. You know, I like the fact that in Once I Was You, I was able to kind of say, look, I was a waitress. That's what I did after college. I was waiting tables and trying to figure out a life freelancing. And there were a lot of no's. Yes, there are some really fabulous yeses that I got, but there's always, especially if you're a journalist of conscience, this is not going to be easy. So I try to tell my students and my staff, you know why you're doing this. It's not a job. It's not to get paid. Although it is a job and we should get paid and we should get paid what we're worth. But it's much more like, why are we doing this?
And how has the pandemic changed your work and your writing process?
Well, the pandemic changed everything for me because I'm a survivor of COVID.
Yeah.
So I gave it to my husband. So I had to deal with that. We are both healthy now, thank God.
And you didn't
All
know
the
at the time
times.
that you had the virus, right?
I'm sorry?
I believe you didn't know at the time that you had the virus. It was only until later that you found
It
antibodies.
was later. Oh yeah, I was definitely not going to go get tested in the middle of that.
Yeah.
No. There was just no way. I was too sick to go and get tested. So it was only in mid-May that I got the antibody test. So I think that just impacts how you see the entire moment that New York was living through at the height of the epidemic of the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Tell me how your experience with the virus changed your outlook on
You
the
know,
pandemic.
we were asking for data very early on. I remember being sick and watching Governor Cuomo's daily updates. And I remember seeing the journalists in the room and just being like, oh my God, they're at work. How can they do that? Because I was so weak. I was just like, how are they working? Why aren't they feeling like me, that I can't do anything? You know, I was just so sick. And then I remember seeing questions about, when is there racial breakdown? Do we have data about racial breakdown? This is when, you know, the lines in the hospital, when we had tents in Central Park. I mean, just the horrors that are being seen in places now like El Paso, Texas. And we didn't have the data.
Mm.
And that was so frustrating, because we knew that Latinos and Latinas and other people of color in this city were keeping the city running. And so both things were happening at the same time. We were being hit by the pandemic. Latinos and Latinas were invisible. I reported about this for Latino USA. I became obsessed with knowing and understanding who was in the emergency rooms,
Mm-hmm.
who were fighting for their breaths. And doctor that we interviewed at Bellevue just said, it's like, she said, you know, like the guy that you drive by and he's working construction, or the guy who's delivering pizza, or the guy who's making the sandwich in the bodega. Those are the guys that suddenly are now here fighting for their last breaths. We're very quarantini. We don't see anybody. We have had no social life at all. I went to the office only to record the audiobook. Other than that, I haven't been to the office. We created a studio here at home. So we're still practicing this. And I'm desperate to be on the street journalist again. I'm
Yeah.
just desperate. So it's, I used to say that 9/11 was the story that changed my life as a journalist, but this one definitely matches and tops.
Well, I'm glad you and your husband were able to recover from it. Not everyone's so lucky.
Agreed. And that's why I give thanks every day. I'm like, oh my God, I'm healthy. I'm okay. And then, you know, we just last week, my husband got news of yet another one of his close friends from the Dominican Republic who passed away. So it's real for us. Um, this is not like happening over there. This is too many people that we know who have died because of this. So
I hear that.
yeah, at the same time, I'm so ready for it to be over. I'm just, you know, every day I'm like, is it over yet? And it's like, it's not over yet.
Yeah.
But we're
You
survivors.
Well, thank you so much, Maria, for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.